The silence that blanketed Ellison's, one of Chicago's most elite restaurants, was almost palpable. Conversation stopped. Forks hovered in midair, and dozens of eyes turned toward the small clearing between the tables. 10-year-old Ethan Caldwell trembled visibly. His arms, supported by lightweight braces, shook as he reached out to Amara Wilson, the restaurant's only black server. The live violin quartet had just begun a gentle tune, and Ethan's sudden urge to invite someone to dance came out of nowhere. "Sir, please manage your son." Manager Reynolds' sharp voice sliced through the quiet. "This is highly inappropriate. This is a fine dining establishment, not a dance floor, and our staff isn't here to entertain children." James Caldwell, founder of Caldwell Enterprises and one of the wealthiest men in the Midwest, clenched his jaw. It was the first time he'd brought Ethan out to a public dinner since the accident that weakened his arms 3 years ago, a decision he now regretted. "Ethan, sit down," James said, his voice low but firm. Amara stood still, her eyes moving between the manager, the billionaire, and the boy whose hand still hung in the air. In her 6 years at Ellison's, she'd mastered the art of fading into the background, especially for patrons like Caldwell. "Mr. Reynolds, my shift is done," she said calmly, untying her apron and placing it on her tray. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she smiled at Ethan and took his hand. "I can't dance in an apron." James shot to his feet. "What are you doing?" Amara met his gaze. "I'm accepting an invitation, sir." Before anyone could intervene, Ethan took a shaky step forward. His brace clicked softly against the floor, but Amara didn't rush him or steer his movements. She matched his pace perfectly. "She's out of a job tomorrow," a woman at a nearby table muttered. James stood frozen, a memory flooding back, his late wife, Clara, swaying with Ethan in their sunlit study. "It's not about being flawless," she'd said. "It's about being present." As Amara followed Ethan's tentative steps, the boy's expression shifted. Fear melted into focus. Embarrassment turned to quiet confidence. For the first time since the accident, he wasn't being directed or fixed. He was leading. "Mr. Caldwell," Reynolds interrupted, "I assure you, this won't happen again. She'll face proper consequences." James didn't reply. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his reaction. A man of his influence could ruin a career with a single phone call. Servers paused. Diners watched with keen interest. But Ethan's smile was the only thing resonating in James's mind. Amara guided Ethan back to their table after a few careful steps. "Thank you for the dance," she said with the formality of addressing a grown-up. "It was an honor." As she turned to leave, James stopped her. "Wait." His voice carried a new tone, unfamiliar even to him. "Your full name?" "Amara Wilson," she replied. James nodded, committing it to memory. He pulled a card from his coat pocket and handed it to her. "My office. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. The room seemed to exhale collectively. Amara took the card, her face composed, though her fingers trembled slightly. "Dad," Ethan said as she walked away, "why did you do that?" The question lingered like a challenge. James looked at his son, seeing not just the child Clara had entrusted to him, but a person with desires he'd overlooked for years. As dinner continued in uneasy silence, no one noticed Amara's glance before she left, not fearful, but resolute, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in James Caldwell's eyes. If this story of courage and connection is stirring your emotions, stay tuned to see how a single act of kindness can ignite a quiet revolution, transforming lives forever. The lobby of Caldwell Tower gleamed with polished steel and granite, catching the morning light. Amara Wilson felt out of place in her best outfit, a gray dress and blazer from a thrift store. The people around her wore suits worth more than her rent. "Amara Wilson to see Mr. Caldwell," she told the receptionist, who gave her a quick once-over before picking up the phone. 22nd floor. Mess. Harper will meet you. In the elevator, Amara gripped her worn handbag, steadying herself. It wasn't fear she felt, but a fierce resolve born from overcoming far greater challenges. Ms. Harper. A woman in her 50s with a crisp demeanor greeted her. Mr. Caldwell is on a call. Follow me. As they walked through sleek corridors, Amara felt the weight of curious stares. A black woman in the executive wing was rare enough to spark whispers. He got you fired, didn't he? Harper asked abruptly when they reached a waiting room. It happens. Big clients make demands. And people like you lose their jobs. People like me? Amara's tone was even, her smile tight. And where's my place supposed to be? Before Harper could respond, her phone buzzed. He's ready. James Caldwell's office spanned half the floor, with windows framing Chicago like a private kingdom. He stood gazing out, exuding control. Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming, he said, gesturing to a chair. Please. The silence that followed was deliberate, meant to unsettle. Amara recognized it instantly. Your background? James asked at last. Excuse me? Education. Degrees. Amara held his gaze. Bachelor's in child psychology from DePaul. Started a master's in developmental therapy, but didn't finish. A flick across James's face, surprise maybe. And you're a server? I work 3 jobs. The restaurant, a library on weekends, and tutoring when I can. James picked up a folder from his desk. I looked into you, Ms. Wilson. I wanted to know who danced with my son. He opened it, revealing photos of a community center. Rhythm of Courage. You started it 7 years ago. Amara sat taller. I co-founded it with my brother Malik. It's a movement program for kids with physical challenges. James flipped through papers. And it's on the verge of closing. No funding. Amara wasn't fazed. Of course he'd uncovered that overnight. I'm not here to ask for money, Mr. Caldwell. Then why are you here? You invited me. He gave a humorless chuckle. Fair enough. He stood, pacing. I want you to work for me. Amara blinked, caught off guard. As a server at your estate? His expression tightened. As a therapeutic guide for Ethan. His son's name seemed to catch in his throat. He glanced at a photo on his desk, a woman cradling a toddler. I have top specialists, therapists, neurologists. But what you did yesterday? He trailed off. It was just a dance, Mr. Caldwell. It was the first time he smiled like that since the accident. The confession seemed to cost him. I don't need a dancer. I need someone who can do what you did, follow, not lead. Amara studied him, seeing past the polished exterior to a father grasping for answers. I can pay you 6 times what you earn now. She stood. No. James looked stunned, unaccustomed to refusal. I don't work for people who see my race or status before my skills, Amara said calmly. And I don't work for those who think money solves everything. His face reddened. You're turning down a solution to your problems for pride? Dignity, she corrected. And because Ethan deserves someone who genuinely cares, not a hired fix. She moved to the door, then paused, placing a card on his desk. Rhythm of Courage classes, Mondays and Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Bring Ethan. First class is free. As she left, Harper, clearly eavesdropping, whispered, You turned down James Caldwell? Are you out of your mind? Amara smiled. Maybe. But I'd rather be mad than owned. The next Tuesday, Amara was at the community center's desk when Malik rushed up. There's a Rolls-Royce outside, he said, adjusting his cap. Guess who's in it? Through the window, Amara saw Ethan in the back seat, peering out nervously. James sat in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel like he was wrestling with himself. He's not coming in, Malik said. Guys like him don't step into places like this. Amara smiled, remembering Ethan's spark during their dance. Never underestimate a determined kid. The car door opened. Ethan emerged. adjusting his arm braces. Then, to everyone's shock, James stepped out, too, dressed in a sweater and slacks, an awkward attempt at casual that still screamed wealth. I knew he'd show, Amara murmured. Malik stared. What did you do? She didn't answer, but her eyes gleamed with purpose. In her small apartment in Englewood, tucked under her couch, was a journal filled with notes on kids like Ethan and men like James, years of study and a plan sparked by a single dance. What James Caldwell didn't know, couldn't fathom in his world of steel towers and endless wealth, was that Amara Wilson wasn't just a server who danced with his son. She was a woman with a vision. And his fortress of control was about to meet its greatest test, the truth that life's deepest lessons can't be bought, they must be lived. Rhythm of Courage operated out of a weathered community hall. Colorful posters lined the walls with slogans like, Move your way, and Every step counts. As James and Ethan entered, kids with various mobility aids practiced free-form movements to a steady beat. Ms. Wilson, Amara greeted, wearing a shirt with the program's logo. Welcome. Ethan watched, wide-eyed, as a boy in a wheelchair spun in tight arcs and a girl with a prosthetic arm crafted a fluid sequence. It looks disorganized, James said, visibly uneasy. There's order, Amara replied. It's just not your kind. She turned to Ethan. Want to try? Ethan nodded eagerly but glanced at his father. Go ahead, James said, tense. I'll stay here. As Amara led Ethan to the group, Malik offered James a chair. First days are tough, he said. For parents, not kids. This isn't therapy, James countered. I've hired the best specialists. How's that working for Ethan? Malik asked gently. The door opened, and an older woman with a carved walking stick entered, her presence commanding. Dr. Vivian Holt, Malik whispered. Neuroscientist, retired from Northwestern. Specializes in motor learning. Dr. Holt greeted the kids, then spotted James. Mr. Caldwell, you rejected my grant proposals twice in 3 years. Dr. Holt, James said, surprised. I didn't expect you here. I advised the program, she said. We're studying how self-directed movement impacts neural adaptation in kids with motor challenges. Research? James frowned. I thought this was a community class. Amara returned, leaving Ethan moving with another child. Rhythm of Courage is a pilot program blending adaptive movement with neuroscience, she explained. Why work as a server if you run this? Because we're underfunded, Amara said. And because you rejected our proposals. The realization hit. You were on those proposals. Co-author. Dr. Holt corrected. Amara paused her masters to support her brother, but her work is revolutionary. You knew me at the restaurant, James said. From the moment you walked in, Amara confirmed. When Ethan stood to dance, I saw a chance to show you, not tell you. Was the dance planned? Never. Ethan chose to stand. I chose to follow. Reporters entered the hall. James stiffened. What's this? Phase 2, Amara said with a faint smile. Malik showed James an article. Innovative movement program yields breakthrough results. We published our findings today, Dr. Holt said, and invited the press. You used my son for publicity, James said, his voice cold. Amara led him to a side room lined with photos of children, each with handwritten progress notes. An empty frame hung on the far wall. What's that? James asked. Our future, Amara said. A full center, helping 600 kids a year instead of 60. You planned this, James said. The dance? The meeting bringing me here on press day. 6 months ago, you cancelled our meeting without a glance at our proposal, Amara said. I vowed to find a way. Amara. Malik called. It's Ethan. They hurried back. Ethan stood in the center, surrounded by kids. The music had stopped, and all eyes were on him. He'd unstrapped one arm brace and was trying to balance without it. Ethan! James stepped forward, but Amara held him back. Wait, she whispered. Watch. Ethan took a deep breath, then moved his arm freely, a small, unsteady motion, but his own. The kids cheered. Cameras flashed. James's guarded expression cracked, his eyes glistening. That's why we built Rhythm of Courage, Amara said softly. Not for perfect movements, but for first ones. You could have done this without manipulating me, James said. You ignored our proposals twice, Amara replied. Reporters noticed James. A murmur spread as Ethan, unaware, kept practicing his new motion, his face lit with focus. James faced a crossroads, retreat in anger, reinforcing his image as untouchable, or embrace the moment his son had sparked. Between his world of control and Ethan's need for freedom, he stood on unfamiliar ground. His eyes moved from Ethan's determined smile to the reporters awaiting his response. Humility wasn't in his playbook, but seeing Ethan's transformation stirred something new. The rhythm of power he'd always known now played a different song, and he had to choose. Keep leading or learn to follow. James faced the reporters. Ethan had just moved his arm freely in front of the cameras, and Amara Wilson had masterfully orchestrated this moment. Mr. Caldwell, a reporter said, why are you at Rhythm of Courage today? Is it true your foundation rejected this program twice? James looked at Ethan, still practicing, unaware of the stakes. Then, to everyone's shock, especially Amara's, he smiled. The hardest thing for someone like me? He said loud enough for all to hear. Admitting when we're wrong. A hush fell. The Caldwell Foundation is proud to fully fund Rhythm of Courage for the next 6 years and build a state-of-the-art center based on the work of Dr. Holt and Ms. Wilson. Flashes erupted. Malik gasped. One condition, James added, eyeing Amara. Ms. Wilson keeps full control of the program. No corporate oversight. 4 months later, construction began on the new Rhythm of Courage Center. It wasn't the flashiest project the Caldwell Foundation had backed, but it was the most forward-thinking. Designed with input from the kids and their families. Amara oversaw the work, often joined by Ethan, who sometimes brought other children. To the staff's surprise, James appeared too, quietly watching the progress. I didn't think you'd show up to planning meetings, Amara said one day, reviewing blueprints. I didn't think I'd be reading about motor learning at 52. James replied, rubbing his eyes over a marked-up research paper. Yet here we are. Amara studied him. Is this guilt or genuine care? Ethan asked to remove his second brace yesterday. James said. I heard. He told me. His old therapist said that'd take 3 years. You fired her, Amara said, pointing to a photo of Ethan using one brace. Because I said she was wrong. And she was. Why haven't you accepted my apology? James asked. You never offered one, Amara said. You funded us, changed policies. That's not an apology, it's action. James nodded. Fair. At the center's opening 5 months later, the contrast with that night at Ellison's was stark. The bright, adaptive space buzzed with kids using various mobility aids, moving freely. In the main hall, Ethan, now with a single lightweight brace, led a short routine with 3 other kids. His movements were limited but confident, defying medical predictions. James watched from afar, not interfering. He doesn't need you to carry him anymore, Amara said, approaching. No, James agreed. But he needs me nearby. Big difference. He turned to her. Thank you? For what? Teaching me to follow. A reporter approached. Mr. Caldwell, how does it feel to see Ethan's progress? James looked at his son, now helping a younger boy balance. Proud, not of what he's overcome, but of what he's inspiring in others. What's the biggest lesson you've learned? James faced the camera. True leaders don't force their path on others. They follow when someone shows a better one. A year later, Rhythm of Courage expanded to 4 cities. Amara won a national award for pediatric therapy innovation, and her methods were adopted by clinics nationwide. Ethan, using a light cane on tough days, joined a mainstream school and became a program ambassador, encouraging other kids to find their rhythm. James learned the toughest lesson: real strength isn't in controlling every step, but in stepping back to let others lead. In a world where the powerful rarely shift and the overlooked stay hidden. The story of James, Amara, and Ethan shows that transformation happens when we cross unseen divides, when a tycoon learns from a server, when a father follows his son. If this tale of a single act of dignity changing lives forever moved you, subscribe to our channel. The greatest revolutions don't start with grand gestures or vast fortunes. They begin when someone takes an authentic first step, and another has the wisdom to follow.